My daughter didn't invite me to her wedding, then asked for my beach house. So my name is Carrie Anderson, 57 years old, and a retired nurse from coastal Maine. After 35 years of saving every penny, I finally bought my dream beach house for $2.6 million last year. It was supposed to be my sanctuary. Then came the Facebook notification that my only daughter Amanda got married without even telling me. The pain was still fresh when 3 days later my phone lit up with her message demanding my beach house for her honeymoon. What she said next left me speechless. "You owe me this. Dad would have wanted it." I stared at those words for hours before I decided what to do. Let me know where you all are watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to follow my journey through this heartbreak. I always believed family was everything. My husband John and I had built our lives around that principle until he passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack when Amanda was only 8 years old. Suddenly, I was a 33-year-old widow with a young daughter to raise on my own. Those early years were incredibly difficult, working double shifts at the hospital while trying to be both mother and father to Amanda. Despite the challenges, I made sure Amanda never went without. I worked those long hours as a nurse at Portland Medical Center, often taking on the overnight shifts that nobody wanted because they paid a little extra. Every birthday had a special cake. Every Christmas had presents under the tree. And somehow I managed to set aside money for her college fund. The other nurses used to tease me about my packed lunches and refusal to join them for coffee runs. "Live a little, Carrie," they would say, but I had bigger plans. I followed every bit of financial advice I could find, putting portions of my salary into retirement accounts and investments. It wasn't glamorous, but watching those accounts slowly grow gave me a sense of security I desperately needed as a single mother. Amanda was such a sweet child back then. She had her father's bright blue eyes and my auburn hair and a smile that could light up a room. On weekends, we would drive to the public beaches along the coast, and she would spend hours building sandcastles and collecting shells. "Someday, Mum," she would say, "we're going to live right on the beach and can do this every day." I kept that dream alive through the tough years. When Amanda started high school, I began putting aside extra money specifically for a beach house fund. It seemed impossible back then, but I was determined. Meanwhile, I encouraged Amanda to focus on her studies, hoping she would follow in my footsteps with a practical career. After Amanda left for college at Boston University, I downsized from our family home to a small apartment, allowing me to save even more. I also made some fortunate investments in technology stocks that performed exceptionally well. By the time I reached my mid-50s, the impossible dream started looking attainable. Last year, after 35 years of nursing, I finally retired and found the perfect property in a small coastal town just north of Portland. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom Cape Cod-style home sitting on an acre of land with 200 feet of private beach access. The moment I walked through the doors and saw the ocean through the large windows, I knew this was it. The asking price of $2.6 million took nearly everything I had saved, but after decades of sacrifice, I felt I deserved this reward. Amanda, now 29, seemed happy for me initially. She came to visit when I first moved in, spending a weekend that reminded me of our old beach trips. We walked along the shore, cooked seafood dinners, and stayed up late drinking wine on the deck while listening to the waves. For a brief moment, I thought we had reconnected, but over the following months, something began to change. Her visits became less frequent, and when she did come, she often brought friends without asking first. They would leave messes that I would have to clean up, and once someone spilled red wine on my new custom sofa without even apologizing. When I gently mentioned these issues to Amanda, she rolled her eyes and said I was being uptight and obsessive about my stuff. Then Amanda met Tyler Williams at a charity gala in Boston where she worked as an event coordinator. He came from a wealthy family that had lost most of their fortune through bad business decisions, though Amanda either didn't know or chose to ignore this fact. Within 3 months of dating, she was completely enamored with him and his promises of a glamorous lifestyle. The first time I met Tyler, something felt off. He was charming and polished on the surface, but there was a calculating look in his eyes when he surveyed my beach house. He asked surprisingly detailed questions about the property value, my mortgage status, and whether I had considered maximizing the rental potential during the tourist season. I answered politely, but kept my concerns to myself, not wanting to upset Amanda, who was clearly infatuated. As their relationship progressed, Amanda began adopting an increasingly luxurious lifestyle that I knew she couldn't afford on her event planning salary. There were designer clothes, exclusive restaurants, and weekend trips to New York City. When I expressed concern about her spending habits, she became defensive and told me I just didn't understand how things worked in her world. The distance between us grew wider with each passing month. Our phone calls became shorter and less frequent. When I would suggest driving down to Boston to take her to lunch, she always had an excuse for why it wasn't a good time. I sent birthday and holiday cards with heartfelt notes inside, only to wonder if she had even received them, as no acknowledgement ever came. Despite all this, I kept trying to maintain our relationship. I believed that eventually she would mature and recognize the value of family over material things. I continued to hope that my sweet little girl was still in there somewhere beneath the surface of the status-seeking woman she had become. It was a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning in April when my world tilted on its axis. I was enjoying my morning coffee on the deck, watching the sunrise over the Atlantic, when my phone chimed with a Facebook notification. One of Amanda's friends had tagged her in a post congratulating her on her wedding. I nearly dropped my mug. Wedding? What wedding? With shaking hands, I opened the app and was immediately confronted with photos of Amanda in a stunning white gown standing next to Tyler in front of an ornate altar. They were surrounded by at least 100 guests in what appeared to be a lavish ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton in Boston. I sat there in shocked silence, trying to process what I was seeing. My only daughter had gotten married without even telling me, let alone inviting me. I scrolled through dozens of photos showing smiling guests, elaborate flower arrangements, a 5-tier cake, and a band that I recognized as one of Boston's most expensive wedding performers. After the initial shock wore off, I tried calling Amanda. The call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text expressing my confusion and hurt. No response. I even emailed her, thinking perhaps she would see that while at work. Nothing. That evening, I called my closest friend Barbara, who had known Amanda since she was a baby. I can't believe she would do this, I sobbed into the phone. What kind of daughter excludes her own mother from her wedding? Barbara was just as shocked as I was. Have you noticed anything recently that might explain this? She asked gently. I thought back over our interactions over the past year. There had been tension, certainly, but nothing that would warrant such a complete exclusion from one of the most important days of her life. The next morning, I received a text from Melissa, one of the few mutual friends Amanda and I still shared. She was confused about why I hadn't been at the wedding and wanted to make sure I was okay. Through Melissa, I learned that the wedding had been in planning for over 6 months. Apparently, Amanda had told everyone that I was too old-fashioned and wouldn't approve of certain aspects of the ceremony, so it was better for everyone if I wasn't there. For 3 days, I tried repeatedly to reach Amanda with no success. Finally, on Friday evening, she answered my call. "Oh, hi, Mum," she said casually, as if nothing was wrong. "Amanda, I saw the wedding photos online. I don't understand why you wouldn't tell me, let alone invite me." There was a pause before she responded in a cold, detached voice that I barely recognized. "It was just easier this way, Mum. Tyler and I wanted a certain aesthetic for our wedding, and frankly, you wouldn't have fit in. You would have been uncomfortable and probably would have embarrassed me in front of his family." each word felt like a physical blow. Embarrassed you? How could you possibly think that? Come on, Mum. You're so traditional, and you always make these comments about money and spending. Tyler's family is very sophisticated, and our friends are all successful young professionals. We just didn't want any tension or awkward moments. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm your mother, Amanda, the only parent you have left. How could you exclude me from your wedding day? This is exactly what I'm talking about, she snapped. You're making this all about you and your feelings being so dramatic. This was our day, not yours. The conversation continued in this vein for another painful few minutes before Amanda abruptly said she had to go because she and Tyler were meeting friends for dinner. After hanging up, I sat alone in my beautiful beach house, feeling more isolated than I ever had before. The home that was supposed to represent my hard-earned reward now felt empty and meaningless. What was the point of all those sacrifices if my only child didn't even want me in her life? Barbara came over that night with a bottle of wine and a shoulder to cry on. As I recounted the conversation with Amanda, she listened without judgment, but I could see the anger flashing in her eyes. You did nothing to deserve this treatment, Carrie, she insisted. Nothing. You devoted your life to giving that girl everything she needed and more. This is about her issues, not yours. Deep down, I knew Barbara was right, but it didn't ease the pain of rejection. I spent the weekend in a fog of grief, alternating between tears and numbness. I looked through old photo albums, wondering where the sweet little girl who once adored me had gone, and how she had transformed into someone who could so callously discard me. By Monday morning, I had cried all the tears I had. I made myself get up, shower, and go for a walk on the beach. The familiar rhythm of waves against the shore had always been soothing, but that day it felt like even the ocean was reminding me of my isolation. Each wave came alone and retreated alone, just as I now faced my future, without the family connection I had always assumed would be my anchor in old age. 3 days after my devastating phone conversation with Amanda, my phone buzzed with a text message. My heart leapt when I saw it was from her, hoping against hope that it might be an apology or at least an explanation. Instead, the message read, Mum, Tyler and I are planning our honeymoon for next month. We want to use the beach house for 2 weeks in June. Let me know which dates you'll be away so we can plan accordingly. I stared at the message in disbelief. No apology for excluding me from her wedding, not even a proper greeting, just an assumption that I would hand over my home on demand. Before I could even formulate a response, another text came through. Actually, the first 2 weeks of June would be ideal for us. Several of our friends might join for a few days too. Can you make sure the guest rooms are prepared, and we'll need the code for the security system and boathouse? I set my phone down, feeling a strange mixture of hurt and anger building inside me. I decided to take some time to process before responding. I went for a long walk along the shoreline, the wind whipping my hair as I tried to make sense of my daughter's audacity. By that evening, I still hadn't responded when my phone rang. It was Amanda. Mum, did you get my texts? We need to know about the house soon so we can finalize our plans, she said without preamble. Amanda, I'm still trying to process the fact that you got married without telling me, I replied, keeping my voice steady. And now you're asking to use my house without even acknowledging what happened. Oh my God, are you still on that? She sighed dramatically. I told you why we did it that way. Can we please move past it? This honeymoon is important to us. It's important to me that my daughter would want me at her wedding, I countered. Look, Mum, her voice took on a harder edge. Tyler's parents paid for this extravagant wedding, and now we're trying to save money on the honeymoon. You have this huge house just sitting there. You owe me this. I owe you. Yes, you do. Dad would have wanted me to have access to the house. He would have wanted to support my marriage. Are you really going to be so selfish about this? The mention of John, who had been gone for over 20 years, sparked something in me. You have no idea what your father would have wanted, Amanda. He would have been heartbroken not to walk his daughter down the aisle. Whatever, she dismissed. The point is, we need the house. It's the least you can do after all the financial support Tyler's parents gave us for the wedding. I took a deep breath. I need time to think about this. There's nothing to think about. Just say yes and give us the dates. I ended the call by telling her I would get back to her soon, which clearly frustrated her. Over the next 2 days, Amanda bombarded me with texts and calls, each more demanding than the last. Then Tyler joined in, calling me directly. "Carrie," he said with false warmth, "I hope you're doing well. Amanda mentioned there might be some confusion about our honeymoon plans." "There's no confusion, Tyler. I'm just not comfortable with the way this request has been made." "I understand family dynamics can be complicated," he said in a patronizing tone, "but this is an important time for us as newlyweds. Surely you want to support your daughter's marriage?" "Of course I do," I replied, "but support goes both ways, and frankly, I'm hurt by how this has all unfolded." "The past is the past," he said dismissively. "We're talking about the future here. Actually, we're planning to invite some business associates to join us for a few days. It could be a great networking opportunity for me, which ultimately benefits Amanda too." That was when I realized this wasn't just about a honeymoon. They wanted to use my home to impress people and advance Tyler's career ambitions. The final straw came the next day when Amanda called again. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Just give us the house for those 2 weeks. If you don't, I swear I'll cut you off completely." No calls, no visits, nothing. Is that really what you want? As she delivered this ultimatum, I felt something shift inside me. The daughter I had raised would never have spoken to me this way. The person on the other end of the phone was a stranger wearing Amanda's voice. "I'll let you know my decision tomorrow," I said quietly, and hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of waves and wrestling with what to do. My daughter was essentially blackmailing me emotionally. If I said no, I might lose her forever. If I said yes, I would be allowing myself to be used and disrespected. As the first light of dawn crept through my windows, I realized that in many ways I had already lost the daughter I knew. The question now was whether I would also lose my self-respect in a futile attempt to hold on to someone who clearly didn't value our relationship. The morning after Amanda's ultimatum, I sat on my deck watching the sunrise, a cup of tea growing cold between my hands. The beauty of the ocean view that usually brought me such peace now seemed to mock my inner turmoil. How had my relationship with my only child come to this point? I reached for my phone and called Barbara. "I don't know what to do," I admitted after explaining the situation. "If I say no, I might lose Amanda forever. If I say yes, I'm telling her it's okay to treat me like a doormat." Barbara had always been my voice of reason since we met during nursing school 35 years ago. "What would you tell a patient in your situation?" she asked, using our old technique for gaining perspective. I thought about it. I'd tell them that healthy relationships require mutual respect and that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. "Exactly," she agreed. "Carrie, you've spent your entire life putting Amanda first. You worked those brutal overnight shifts so she could have dance lessons. You ate ramen noodles so she could have new clothes for school. You put off buying yourself anything nice so you could save for her college fund. And now she can't even be bothered to invite you to her wedding. Hearing it laid out so starkly made my chest tighten. But she's still my daughter. I love her." "Of course you do. That will never change. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is establish boundaries." After we hung up, I made an appointment with Dr. Levine, the therapist. I had started seeing after John died. Though I hadn't needed regular sessions for years, she had always told me her door was open if I ever needed to talk. When someone shows you who they are, believe them, Dr. Levine said gently during our session that afternoon. Amanda has shown you that she views you as a resource, not as a person with feelings who deserves respect. But if I refuse, she threatens to cut me off completely. And if you comply with demands that are coupled with such threats, what message does that send? That her behaviour is acceptable and effective? She leaned forward. Carrie, what would John say if he could see how Amanda is treating you? The question hit me hard. John had been such a kind, principled man. He believed in treating others with respect and dignity. He would be heartbroken, I whispered. He would tell me that this isn't the daughter we raised. That evening I pulled out an old photo album. There was John holding newborn Amanda in the hospital, his face a mixture of terror and adoration. There we were, as a family at the beach building sandcastles. Amanda on her father's shoulders, both of them laughing. What would you do, John? I asked the empty room. Would you let her take advantage of your kindness, or would you stand firm? In the silence that followed, I felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge. John wouldn't want me to be mistreated even by our daughter. He would want me to be respected. I spent the next day reflecting on what truly mattered to me. I thought about how hard I had worked for this beach house, how many sacrifices it represented. This wasn't just about a property, it was about my dignity and self-worth. By evening, I knew what I needed to do. I wouldn't simply say yes or no. Instead, I would offer Amanda a chance to repair our relationship, to treat me as a mother, deserving of respect, rather than a resource to be exploited. I carefully composed a message to her. Amanda, I've given your request a lot of thought. I'd like to discuss it in person. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow, just the two of us? Her reply came quickly. Fine. Starbucks on Congress Street, 11 a.m. As I prepared for bed that night, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, I was putting my own emotional needs first. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would face it with dignity and self-respect. In the morning, I dressed carefully in a blue blouse that John had always loved, applied light makeup, and drove into Portland for our meeting. As I pulled into the parking lot, I said a silent prayer that Amanda would be receptive to what I had to say. I spotted her immediately upon entering the coffee shop, tapping impatiently on her phone screen. I took a deep breath and walked toward the table, ready to stand my ground, while keeping the door open for a better relationship. The Starbucks was crowded with the late morning rush when I arrived. Amanda barely looked up from her phone as I approached the table where she was sitting. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail and she wore designer sunglasses pushed up on her head despite the cloudy day outside. Hi, Amanda, I said, setting down my purse and sitting across from her. Thank you for meeting me. She glanced up briefly. Sure, I can only stay for 30 minutes though. I have a lunch meeting at 1. I nodded, noticing she hadn't bothered to get me a coffee, though she had one for herself. That's fine, this shouldn't take long. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. I used to know every thought in my daughter's head, every worry, every dream. Now she was a stranger to me, tapping away at her phone as if I wasn't even there. Could you put your phone down for a minute, please? I asked. This is important. She sighed dramatically, but complied, placing her phone face down on the table. So, about the beach house. We really need to finalise these plans today. I took a deep breath. Amanda, I've thought a lot about your request and about our relationship. I want you to know that it hurt me deeply to be excluded from your wedding. She rolled her eyes. Are we seriously back on this again? I told you why we made that decision. Yes, you did. You told me I would embarrass you, that I wouldn't fit in with your idea of sophistication. That hurt, Amanda. I'm your mother. Look, it wasn't personal. Not personal. I interrupted, my voice steady but firm. Excluding your only living parent from your wedding is about as personal as it gets. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Fine. I'm sorry you feel hurt. Now, can we please move on to the house situation Tyler is expecting me to confirm today? I studied her face, searching for any genuine remorse or understanding. There was none. I've decided that I can't just hand over the keys to my house under these circumstances, I said calmly. Her eyes widened. Excuse me, this house represents my life's work, Amanda. 35 years of sacrifice. I'm happy to share it with you, but only if you can show me the basic respect of acknowledging how your actions have affected me. So you're saying no? Her voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. I'm saying that I deserve to be treated with respect, not as a convenient resource you can tap when you need something. Amanda's face flushed with anger. You are unbelievable. After everything I've been dealing with planning this wedding now, I have to manage your emotional neediness too. Asking to be treated with basic courtesy isn't being needy, Amanda. God, you're so selfish, she hissed. Dad would be so disappointed in you right now. That comment stung, but I maintained my composure. Your father taught me the importance of self-respect, actually, and he would be heartbroken to see how you're treating me. She grabbed her phone and began texting furiously. I'm telling Tyler to come. Maybe he can talk some sense into you. This is between you and me, Amanda. Tyler doesn't need to be involved. He's my husband now, Mum. We're a package deal. I sipped the coffee I had purchased for myself on the way in, giving myself a moment to stay centered. I have a proposition for you. The beach house is yours to use for your honeymoon on 2 conditions. Her texting paused and she looked up with narrowed eyes. What conditions? First, you and I spend a weekend together there before your honeymoon, just the 2 of us trying to rebuild some of what we've lost. Second, no extra guests. A honeymoon should be about the newlyweds, not entertaining business associates. She laughed incredulously. You're joking, right? You're trying to blackmail me into spending time with you. It's not blackmail, Amanda. It's an attempt to salvage our relationship while still sharing something precious with you. Before she could respond, Tyler pushed through the coffee shop door and strode toward our table. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his expression hard as he approached. What's going on here, Carrie? He demanded without greeting. Amanda says you're refusing to let us use the beach house. That's not exactly what I said, I began, but Amanda cut me off. She's being totally unreasonable, Tyler. She wants me to jump through hoops just to use a house that's sitting empty anyway. Tyler pulled up a chair and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. Listen, Carrie, I understand you might be feeling left out after the wedding, but this is ridiculous. We're family now. Family respects each other, I said simply. I haven't seen much of that lately. With all due respect, Tyler's tone made it clear there was none. You're acting like a child. This is a simple request. The house is there. You're not using it. We need it. What's the problem? The problem is that I'm being treated like a convenient ATM rather than Amanda's mother. Tyler's face hardened. So it's like, that is it. You're going to hold your wealth over your daughter's head. This has nothing to do with money and everything to do with respect. Amanda suddenly stood up, grabbing her purse. I can't believe this. My own mother is refusing to help us after we just got married. What kind of person does that? Several people were now openly watching our confrontation. I remained seated, keeping my voice low. Amanda, please sit down. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, she snapped. Either you let us use the house, no strings attached, or you can forget about having any relationship with us going forward. Tyler stood beside her, placing his arm around her shoulders in a show of solidarity. You heard her. This is your last chance to do the right thing, Carrie. I looked up at them both, this united front of entitlement and manipulation, and felt a profound sadness. But beneath that sadness was something stronger, self-preservation. I love you, Amanda. You're my daughter, and nothing will ever change that. But I won't be bullied or threatened, not even by you. My offer stands. Think about it and let me know. Amanda's face contorted with fury. "You'll regret this," she spat, before turning on her heel and storming out of the coffee shop with Tyler close behind. As the door swung shut behind them, I remained at the table, hands wrapped around my cooling coffee. A middle-aged woman at the next table caught my eye and gave me a small nod of understanding. I realized I wasn't the only parent who had faced such painful confrontations. I drove home slowly, tears occasionally blurring my vision, but underneath the hurt was a strange, growing sense of relief. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had stood up for myself, set a boundary, and held firm, despite the emotional cost. The beach house was waiting for me when I returned, its large windows reflecting the afternoon sunlight off the ocean. As I walked inside, it felt different somehow. Not empty or lonely, but full of possibility. This was my home, earned through decades of hard work and sacrifice. No one had the right to make me feel guilty for protecting it or myself. In the days following our confrontation at the coffee shop, I was met with a barrage of hostile messages from Amanda. Her texts alternated between angry accusations and guilt-inducing pleas, but never once included any acknowledgement of my feelings or an apology for her behavior. "You're choosing a house over your own daughter," one message read. "I hope you're happy being alone in your precious beach house." I didn't respond to any of them, recognizing that engaging would only fuel the fire. Instead, I focused on self-care and rebuilding my sense of peace. I took long walks on the beach each morning, joined a local book club, and started volunteering at the community garden down the street. A week after our coffee shop encounter, I was horrified to discover that Amanda had taken to social media with her grievances. She posted a lengthy statement on Facebook describing how her selfish mother had refused to share her vacation home for a honeymoon after working as a nurse and inheriting family money. The post was filled with half-truths and outright lies, including the implication that I had somehow come into wealth through inheritance rather than decades of hard work and careful saving. The post quickly garnered sympathetic comments from her friends, many of whom I had never met. "So sorry you have to deal with this toxicity," wrote one. "Some people just can't be happy for others," commented another. Even more painful were the reactions from extended family members who only had Amanda's skewed version of events. My cousin Susan, whom I had always been close with, sent me a disappointed text asking why I was being so difficult. My nephew Michael John's brother's son called to mediate the situation, clearly having already decided that I was in the wrong. I found myself having to defend basic facts about my life and finances to people who should have known better. No, I didn't inherit money from John's family. He was a high school teacher. We lived paycheck to paycheck for years, I explained repeatedly. Yes, the beach house cost my entire life savings. No, I'm not hoarding wealth to punish Amanda. Barbara was furious on my behalf. "This is character assassination," she fumed during one of our regular coffee meetups. "She's trying to bully you into giving in by turning people against you." The worst part is that some people are believing her, I admitted. People who should know me better than that. The situation escalated beyond social media when I returned home one afternoon to find one of my beautiful front windows shattered. A rock lay among the glass shards on my living room floor, wrapped in a note that read, "Selfish bitch," in handwriting I didn't recognize. I called the police immediately. Officer Reynolds, a kind woman in her 40s, took photographs and filed a report. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" she asked. I hesitated before mentioning the conflict with Amanda. I didn't want to believe my own daughter could be involved in something like this, but the timing seemed too coincidental. "I can't say for certain it's connected," I told Officer Reynolds, "but I've recently had a falling out with my daughter and her new husband over this property." The officer nodded thoughtfully. "Unfortunately, family disputes over property can get ugly. I've seen it too many times. Would you like to file for a restraining order as a precaution?" The thought of legally barring my own daughter from approaching me was almost too painful to contemplate, but after the window incident, I felt I had no choice. The next day, I went to the courthouse and filed the paperwork, tears streaming down my face as I signed the documents. In the midst of this turmoil, I received an unexpected call from Jessica Bennett, who had been Amanda's roommate in college and remained one of her bridesmaids. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm so sorry to bother you," she began hesitantly. "I've been friends with Amanda for years, but I need to tell you something." Jessica explained that she had become increasingly uncomfortable with how Amanda and Tyler had been discussing me and the beach house. "They never planned to just use it for a 2-week honeymoon," she revealed. "Tyler's been telling everyone they're going to move in for the summer and possibly longer. He said something about establishing residency, so it would be harder for you to make them leave." My blood ran cold at this information. "Did Amanda go along with this plan?" Jessica sighed. "She's completely under his influence now, but yes, she knew. She told me they were going to wear you down until you either let them stay indefinitely or signed the house over to avoid the conflict." After thanking Jessica for her honesty, I immediately called my lawyer, Michael Greenbaum, who had handled the purchase of the beach house. He confirmed my fears. If I allowed Amanda and Tyler to establish residency, even temporarily removing them could become a legal nightmare. "Based on what you've told me, I strongly advise against giving them any access to the property," he warned. "And given the vandalism, you should consider additional security measures." Following his advice, I had security cameras installed around the property and upgraded the locks on all doors. I also arranged for a neighbour, Tom Miller, a retired police officer who lived year-round in the house next door, to keep an eye on the place when I went into town. Tom proved to be not just a vigilant neighbour, but also a good friend. He invited me to join him and his wife Eleanor for dinner one evening, and I was surprised to find myself enjoying their company immensely. They introduced me to other year-round residents in our small beach community, and gradually I began building a new social circle of supportive friends who knew nothing of my family drama and accepted me for who I was. As spring turned to summer, the beach house that had been the centre of so much conflict became a source of unexpected joy. Instead of hosting Amanda and Tyler, I invited Barbara and other friends for weekend visits. I joined the local historical society and opened my home for their annual fundraising tour of historic coastal properties. I even allowed a local artist group to use my deck for their weekly painting sessions, finding pleasure in watching them capture the beauty of the ocean view I was fortunate enough to see every day. One evening, as I sat on my deck, watching the sunset. With Barbara, she remarked, "You know, Carrie, you seem different these past few weeks. Stronger somehow." I considered her observation. "I think I am stronger. All those years raising Amanda alone, I was so focused on being the perfect mother that I lost sight of myself. I let her needs always come before mine because that's what I thought good mothers did. And now I understand that self-respect isn't selfishness. Setting boundaries isn't rejection. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in your own mistreatment, even when it comes from someone you love deeply." Barbara raised her wine glass in a toast. To boundaries and self-respect, I clinked my glass against hers. And to unexpected new beginnings, as if to underscore my words, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Amanda, the first contact in over a month. "We need to talk. Can I come by tomorrow?" I showed the message to Barbara, who arched an eyebrow. "Are you going to see her?" I thought about it carefully before responding. "Yes, but on my terms this time. Not at the house and not alone." I texted back, "We can meet at the cafe in town, 2 p.m. Then I added, "Just you please." Her reply was brief but gave me a glimmer of hope. "Okay, just me." 6 months had passed since that fateful coffee shop confrontation. The main summer had given way to fall, and now winter was approaching, bringing crisp mornings and earlier sunsets over the Atlantic. My beach house had transformed from a source of conflict to a true sanctuary, not just for me, but for others in my community. After the vandalism incident and Jessica's revelation about Amanda and Tyler's true intentions, I had made some significant changes in my life. The restraining order, which initially felt like an admission of defeat, ultimately gave me the space I needed to rediscover my own strength and worth. One of my first decisions was to convert the downstairs guest suite of my beach house into a small community space for local events. I hosted monthly meetings for a support group I started for parents, navigating difficult relationships with adult children. It began with just 4 of us sitting awkwardly around my dining table, sharing stories of heartbreak and confusion, but quickly grew to over 20 members who found comfort in the knowledge that they weren't alone. "Before I found this group," said Margaret, a 70-year-old whose son hadn't spoken to her in 5 years, "I thought I was the only mother in the world who had failed so completely. Now I understand that sometimes these ruptures happen despite our best efforts." These gatherings became a source of healing, not just for the participants, but for me as well. Each time I listened to another parent's story, I gained new perspective on my own situation with Amanda. I began to see that her behavior reflected her own internal struggles, rather than any failure on my part. My relationship with my neighbours Tom and Eleanor Miller blossomed into a close friendship that added richness to my daily life. Tom taught me how to fish off the rocky point at the edge of my property, and Eleanor introduced me to her quilting circle. Through them, I met James Peterson, a kind, soft-spoken widower who had moved to the coast after retiring from his dental practice in Philadelphia. James and I started as walking companions, meeting each morning at 7 to stroll along the beach before the day grew busy. Gradually, our friendship evolved into something deeper and more meaningful. He respected my boundaries and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. By Thanksgiving, we were spending most evenings together, cooking dinner and watching old movies, or simply sitting on my deck with blankets talking as we watched the stars come out over the ocean. "You know," James said one evening as we shared a bottle of wine, "when Sarah died 3 years ago, I never thought I'd find happiness again. But here I am, happier than I've been in a long time." I squeezed his hand, understanding exactly what he meant. After all the turmoil with Amanda, I had similarly believed that a significant piece of my heart had been permanently damaged. Yet somehow, new joy had found its way in. The most unexpected development came in October when I received a phone call from Amanda. Her voice sounded different, subdued, almost hesitant. "Mum," she began, "I've been seeing a therapist. Tyler and we're separating. I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened." I listened carefully, trying not to let my hopes rise too quickly. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between her apartment in Portland and my beach house. When I arrived, the young woman sitting at the corner table barely resembled the entitled, angry person who had confronted me at Starbucks 6 months earlier. Amanda looked thinner, her designer clothes replaced with a simple sweater and jeans. The flashy engagement ring and wedding band were noticeably absent from her left hand. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "You're my daughter, Amanda. That hasn't changed." She looked down at her coffee cup. "I've been awful to you. The things I said, the things I did. I'm so ashamed." "What's changed?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral. She took a deep breath. "After you refused to let us use the beach house, Tyler became obsessed with it. He started talking about legal ways to force you out, about claiming that you were mentally incompetent. When I expressed doubts, he became controlling, even scary sometimes." A wave of protective anger washed over me. "Did he hurt you?" "Not physically," she said quickly. But emotionally, yes, I started to see similarities between how he treated me and how I had been treating you, using manipulation and threats to get what he wanted. Our conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. Amanda revealed that she had moved out of the luxury apartment she shared with Tyler and into a modest place of her own. She was seeing a therapist twice a week and had reconnected with old friends like Jessica, who had distanced themselves during her relationship with Tyler. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right away," she said toward the end of our meeting. "I know I've done too much damage for that, but I'm hoping that maybe with time we could try to rebuild something." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Time is exactly what we need, Amanda. Small steps forward." In the weeks that followed, we began a careful dance of reconciliation. Weekly phone calls, occasional lunches. Each interaction was a bit easier than the last, though we both knew our relationship would never be quite the same. The innocence was gone, replaced by a more mature understanding that relationships require work boundaries and mutual respect. By Christmas, Amanda had filed for divorce from Tyler. She asked if she could come to the beach house for Christmas Day, and I agreed with both trepidation and hope. James offered to be there for moral support, but I told him this was something Amanda and I needed to navigate alone. She arrived bearing gifts and an obvious nervousness. As we sat in my living room, the ocean visible through the large windows that had been repaired after the vandalism, she handed me a small, wrapped package. "Open it," she urged. Inside was a framed photograph of the two of us from years ago, standing on a public beach when she was about 10 years old. We were both laughing our arms around each other, waves crashing behind us. "I found this when I was moving out," she explained. "It reminded me of who we used to be to each other, who I want us to be again someday." I felt tears welling in my eyes. "We'll never be exactly those people again, Amanda. We've both changed too much, but maybe we can be something new. Something that honors the past while acknowledging everything we've learned." She nodded, wiping away her own tears. "I'd like that." As I look back now on the journey of the past year, I'm struck by how differently things turned out than I could have ever imagined. The beach house that nearly tore my family apart has become a gathering place for healing and new beginnings, not just for me, but for others in similar situations. I've learned that unconditional love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be disrespected or manipulated. True love requires honesty, boundaries, and sometimes difficult choices. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships of any kind. My relationship with Amanda is still a work in progress. There are awkward moments and occasional setbacks. The trust that was broken isn't fully repaired, and perhaps it never will be completely. But we're both trying, and in that effort, we've found a new kind of connection based on who we are now rather than who we once were. The beach house stands as a symbol of both painful division and hopeful reconciliation. Its walls have witnessed tears of both sorrow and joy. Its windows frame not just the beauty of the Atlantic, but the beauty of personal growth and transformation. Life rarely gives us neat, perfect endings. Instead, it offers us the chance to write new beginnings, even after heartbreak. I don't know what the future holds for Amanda and me, but I do know that whatever comes, I'll face it with the strength and self-respect I've fought hard to reclaim. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? How did it change your relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might be struggling with similar challenges. Remember, standing up for yourself doesn't mean giving up on love. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for others. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.